They say I am evil and a monster. They're right.
Get ready for never-before-seen courtroom drama as these 5 defendants react to shocking verdicts. Number 1. Diana Lovejoy. Diana Lovejoy's trial was a popular one, as she was a notable figure in the fitness industry and the owner of a flourishing fitness business. She had a significant fan following on YouTube, where she would make videos on ready-to-eat quick and healthy meals. Diana Lovejoy was your regular American mum, juggling between a career and the responsibilities of a mother. However, her life took an unexpected turn when her marriage with Greg Mulvihill hit a rough patch. The two decided to split up, but the divorce proceedings that lasted for 2 years raised many disputes between them, one of them being the custody of their only son. Greg wanted joint custody, while Diana contested for sole custody. Disappointed by the direction of her divorce proceedings, Diana took things into her own hands and hired a man to kill her ex-husband. Interestingly, she was also dating the same man she hired to kill her husband. As luck would have it, her plan backfired, and the two were caught before they could cause any real harm to Greg. Diana and her boyfriend had a speedy trial, and Diana Lovejoy was sentenced to 26 years in prison on the charge of murder and attempt to murder. Can you guess how Diana reacted to the verdict? Diana looked stunned as the verdict was read out in the courtroom footage. She is seen asking her counsel a question, and as the gravity of her situation dawns on her, she slowly collapses toward her right side.
3925, DA number OCD 980. Verdict. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Weldon K. McDavid, guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder.
If you thought Diana's reaction was shocking, you wouldn't believe what the next defendant did when the judge read her verdict. Number 2. Shelby Isaac. Meet Shelby Isaac, a 19-year-old woman convicted of killing a man, a pregnant woman, and an unborn child at the Sycamore Lake apartments. It all started with hair problems. Shocked? Brace yourself, as the case only gets more upsetting. Isaac had ordered bundles of hair weaves from Tate valued at $250, but she wasn't happy with her purchase. So she decided to exact revenge on Tate in the most brutal manner. She called him back to set up another meeting under the guise of buying more. It's hard to contest District Attorney Glenn Beatty's assessment that she lured that man to his death. When Tate pulled up to her apartments with his pregnant girlfriend, Isaac opened fire on the car, taking 2 innocent lives in a moment. When Isaac's case went to court, the prosecutors argued that the case was about Tate and Thomas, who had been robbed of their lives without provocation. Their death was a tremendous loss to the families who couldn't believe what had happened. On the other hand, the defense attorney pleaded that there was no physical evidence to connect Isaac to the crime except for a witness, Victoria Say. Although Isaac lived at the Sycamore Lake apartments, no neighbors had seen her at the crime scene. Can you imagine what happened at Isaac's sentencing? As Judge James Lammy read the first guilty count of second-degree murder, Isaac collapsed to the ground, unable to process her new reality. Interestingly, the judge remained unfazed and continued reading the verdict.
Is that your verdict?
Yes.
And is that your verdict, ma'am?
Yes.
Is that your verdict, ma'am? Sir, is that your verdict? Ma'am, is that your verdict? Ma'am, is that your verdict? And,
Coming up next is a serial killer who conveniently took the lives of innocent girls but couldn't bear to hear his own death sentence. Number 3. Anthony Kirkland. Anthony Kirkland is no stranger to prison. The first time he found himself behind bars was in 1987, when he was convicted for killing 28-year-old Leona Douglas. The violent murder shocked the community, as Kirkland used lighter fluid to set Douglas's body on fire while she was still alive. After serving 16 years in prison, he was released in 2003. What do you think he did after serving such a lengthy jail time? He reverted to his old ways and found himself back in court for the murder of Mary Jo Newton and Kimya Rollison. He pleaded guilty to both murders and then stood trial in the killings of 14-year-old Casonia Crawford in 2006 and 13-year-old Esme Kenny in 2009. This time, Anthony Kirkland was sentenced to death, and as the judge read out his verdict, Kirkland couldn't hold himself and collapsed to the ground. How ironic that a man who took the lives of 5 women and even burned their bodies didn't have the heart to hear his own death sentence. As soon as Kirkland hit the ground, security officers pulled him to his feet. and the judge continued to finish his reading. After Judge Patrick Dinkelacke imposed the death sentence, Kirkland was led out of the courtroom. At 51, Kirkland was back in court, contending that the judge improperly sentenced him to death for the murders of Casonia Crawford and Esme Kenny. However, all 7 justices agreed with the former judgment and commented that the conclusion remains sound. Have you ever wondered what happens when the tables are turned over to the judges? The next case is the perfect example of how judges react to their own sentencing. Number 4. Judge Tracy Hunter. Judge Tracy Hunter's legal battle began in 2014 when she was indicted on multiple felony charges, including using her position as a judge to give confidential documents to her brother. She was convicted on 1 count of unlawful interest in a public contract and sentenced to jail term at the end of 2014. However, she was allowed to remain out while she pursued various appeals. But things changed when U.S. District Judge Timothy Black, who had the case for 3 years, finally declared the sentence could go forward. Chaos erupted in the Ohio courtroom when former Cincinnati Judge Tracy Hunter refused to comply with courtroom security officers on her way out. Hunter didn't walk away on her own, but fell limp in a deputy's arms. She had to be dragged out of the courtroom like a rag doll. Hunter's case caused significant uproar in the African American community as her supporters rallied in her defense. One of Hunter's supporters also expressed her anger in the courtroom, but was quickly taken into custody as she charged toward the former judge's defense. On the other hand, the prosecutor in her case stressed that Hunter simply wanted to control the facts and write the law however it would benefit her. Next up, a millionaire arsonist who thought death would be easier than living his life in prison. Number 5. Michael Marin. Michael Marin wasn't a regular convict. A Yale-educated lawyer who had amassed considerable wealth working in finance, Marin was used to living large. His eclectic interests were the talk of the town. He had also scaled Mount Everest, served as a Mormon missionary, and later as an executive in Japan. Things were working just fine for Marin until he could not keep up with mortgage payments. He decided to raffle his house through a charity fundraiser, but that attempt also failed. Ultimately, he purposefully burnt down his $2.5 million mansion in the Tony Baltimore Estates neighborhood of Phoenix. Clad in scuba gear, Marin was caught climbing down a ladder from the 2nd floor of his mansion to escape the fire. His harrowing escape alerted fire officials, who found his behavior and readiness bizarre. Later, investigators discovered he had set his home on fire from 4 different points using an accelerant. When the case went to trial, Marin prepared himself for the worst. He knew if he was convicted, it would mean spending 16 years behind bars. So he devised another escape plan. Can you guess what it was? As the judge read out the verdict, a distraught Marin can be seen burying his face into his hands and discreetly placing something in his mouth. His face started turning red, and he could be seen reaching out for a liquid in a plastic sports bottle. Seconds after taking a sip, he turned to get a tissue, experienced convulsions, and collapsed. Michael Marin was pronounced dead in the hospital. Investigators later discovered that Marin purchased cyanide powder in 2011 before his trial even started. They speculated that the millionaire arsonist made capsules he could swallow from the cyanide powder in the courtroom if things went south. If you think these reactions were shocking, you'll never believe how these KKK members reacted to their life sentences.